There's a leader I spoke with recently. He ran a 7,000 person organization, built it over decades. One morning, without warning, he was terminated. But this episode isn't about the loss, it's about what the loss revealed. Because when everything he'd built was removed in a single conversation, the first question he asked wasn't about severance or reputation. Question was this: what's the last good thing I'll be for my children? That question didn't come from a broken man. It came from a man who finally heard his own voice without a title talking over it. Yesterday, we said that strategy wasn't the problem. The self running it was behind. Today, I want to go another step further. What happens when the strategy actually works? You close the deal, land the role, build that thing you said would change everything. And the gap doesn't close. If anything, it gets wider. We're going to go to a place where achievement meets silence. You know the pattern. You hit a goal, and instead of sitting with it, you're scanning for the next one. The promotion lands, a revenue target gets hit. Your launch is gone live. Somewhere between the congratulations and the quiet drive home, you feel less instead of more. Most people call this ambition. The hustle crowd calls it drive. But if we look closer, it's not forward motion, it's avoidance. Sitting still inside an achievement means sitting with whoever you are without the effort. And for a lot of high performers, that person's a stranger. This leader I mentioned, he described what came after his termination as a submarine dive. 1 week, everyone in the industry was calling. The next, complete silence. Not a slow fade, but a wall of nothing. He went from the center of every room to being invisible overnight. The silence did something unexpected. It forced him to answer questions the role had always answered for him. Questions like, who am I when no one needs me to perform? And what am I worth when the output stops? He told me the hardest part wasn't rebuilding, it was discovering that the identity he'd spent decades constructing had no foundation outside of the title. The role had been load-bearing. Remove it, the whole structure reveals itself as hollow. If you felt something tighten just now, stay with it. That recognition, that's the beginning, not the problem. His experience sounds extreme. CEO of thousands, terminated overnight. But the pattern scales all the way down. It's the same dynamic when you finish a project and immediately feel restless. Or when someone compliments your work and your first instinct is deflection. Maybe you earned the thing you said you wanted and your body responds with anxiety instead of relief. What often looks like self-sabotage after success is actually loyalty to an older version of you, the version that earned belonging through effort rather than presence. That version built something real, and it kept you alive. But it only knows how to climb. It doesn't have instructions for what to do when you arrive. The leader, he found his footing, not in another title or another organization, in that question he asked at the bottom. What's the last good thing I'll be for my children? That wasn't despair. It was the first sentence he spoke from his actual identity instead of his professional one. Arrival, when it's real, doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like standing in a quiet room and not reaching for your phone. Hearing great work and just letting it land without immediately listing what still needs fixing. The first thing you lose when you stop climbing is the certainty. That's grief, real grief, for that version of you that carried you for years. But on the other side of that grief is something the climbing identity could never produce: rest that doesn't feel like failure. What would you stop chasing if you believed you'd already arrived? Sit with that one today. Don't answer it fast. If you've built an identity that only knows how to climb and you're starting to feel the cost at the top, it's not a breakdown. It's your signal. The no-cost identity call is one conversation where we look at that signal together. The link is in the show notes. Tomorrow, the gap doesn't just show up in big moments. It shows up every morning in the promises you make to yourself and quietly break before lunch. You don't want to miss it. The next summit won't close the gap. You need an identity that knows how to stand still. With strength and heart, I'm Sean Michael. Stay close.
We spend a lot of time on this show talking about the threshold, the space between the identity that got you here and the one required for the new ground. You're listening to this because something in your current architecture is fracturing. You're running the performer playbook or the striver protocol, and it's costing you an immense amount of energy to maintain the facade. The external results are there, but the internal friction, it's burning you out. Most people will let this episode end and go right back into the performance. They'll put the mask back on for their next Zoom meeting and keep relying on the identity that's actively caging them. I'm looking for the leader who's done performing. If you're ready to look at the structural identity collapse happening beneath the surface, we need to map your architecture. Go to the link in the show notes, book your identity clarity call. We'll identify the exact survival identity running your calendar and begin the shift into conscious leadership. Stop performing, start becoming.